For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. On infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections.
If I were the devil, I'd take from those who have and give to those who want it until I had killed the incentive of the ambitious.
The violence and vandalism is being led by Antifa and other radical left-wing groups who are terrorizing the innocent, destroying jobs, hurting businesses, and burning down buildings. They are coming after me because I am fighting for you. That's what's happening.
Greetings, fellow thought criminals, and thank you for joining the insurrection. I'm Michael Lauber, and today, sitting in for Derek, who is at a campaign event, is our good friend Terry Newsome. Hey, Terry, we made it through another week. It's still not the end of the world, but we are under an invasion. So I'm going to go ahead. We have a very special guest here tonight. I'm going to go ahead and bring him in. Again, somebody out there is really doing the Lord's work. Ben Bergquam, I'm sure you guys have all seen him over on Real America's Voice, host of Law and Border. And I want to start right off by thanking you because you really are covering the stories the mainstream media doesn't want you to see. And you're doing it like just about nobody else is, from covering the Darien Gap on up and then highlighting all these cities right now that are just getting flooded with illegal aliens and all the chaos that that's causing here in America. Ben, how are you doing this evening?
Hey, great, man. Thank you for the intro. Great to be with you, Michael. I'm actually at one of those places now. I'm at Cincinnati Airport. So this is one of those places that, you know, we cover New York, we cover Chicago, we cover the big cities, Miami, LA, that are getting overrun, but now it's even these smaller kind of the not the hubs, but the smaller municipal airports that they're using. I mean, every airport now. I fly out of Little Rock. Just about every flight, there's an illegal coming up from the border. And now Cincinnati is one of those where you have huge numbers from Senegal, huge numbers from Mauritania, huge numbers from India. It's everywhere is getting, the invasion is everywhere in America now.
Hey, Ben, are they sorry, Mike, are they clustering, like, you know, we have a lot of Venezuelans here in Chicago. Are they purposely clustering them in certain cities together from the same countries? Are you aware of that? Or?
You know, it's tough to say. I think initially that's what happened. When you look at what Obama did with, he took the Office of Refugee Resettlement, and that's really where all of this, the invasion that we saw start happening in America really came from. You know, they took something good, the idea of the asylum process, the people that were escaping communism from years ago, and they've bastardized it into what we see today. And so some of that was directed, Obama sending these guys into the Northeast, into the North, basically to take over states. But some of it's just human nature. You tend to go where people speak the same language. So you have a lot of Spanish speaking down in South Florida, and up here, now that you have large areas of Muslim and Arab-speaking and French-speaking populations, you have a tendency of people to go to those places. But then you also have the NGOs that then cater to that. So you have this huge illegal immigration. Basically, it's a travel agency, and you just pick your location. And so, again, some of it's directed, but I do believe some of it's just, by their own choice. But some of it definitely is controlled in order to shift demographics, in order to get more congressional representation in certain areas. But, all of it's to the detriment of our country.
Oh, yeah. Well, and in Cincinnati, I'm going to just go out here on a limb, and I'm going to guess it's probably Catholic Social Services. Is that who's behind moving everybody up to the Cincinnati area?
Catholic. Yeah, in fact, it's Catholic Charities. In fact, they're the primary. They have the largest contract here. And I went to their large facility, huge facility. It's multi stories just outside on the suburbs of Chicago. And I actually ran into one of their employees. She didn't know who I was, and so she started spilling the beans. And she told me that they've actually had to change the language. They're primarily Spanish speaking, but they've actually had to change the language to French speaking because they have so many French speaking Africans coming through this area now. And so they're actually having to change their whole programming system because of the number of people that are coming through right now from particularly Central and West Africa.
Yeah. And just to really underscore that, bringing all these people over from, Senegal, Mauritania to Cincinnati, you're bringing in a huge Islamic population, which again is going to lead to even more problems here. Mauritania is a nation that still practices slavery. There were a fair number of refugees from Mauritania that happened to live in Cincinnati. Most of them were those that escaped slavery 10 years ago, but now that's made it a destination point for more people from that region of the world, who again are. I highly doubt the people that are here that have already assimilated from Mauritania and North Africa that escaped slavery and escaped Islam want to deal with that again. And I heard a few weeks ago we had 5,000 on the way and 5,000 here and another 5,000 on the way. Is that true, or is that what you're hearing?
As far as numbers go, we're having hundreds every single day cross, in particular in areas that we broke that story just a couple months ago in Lukeville, Arizona. And oddly enough, you have, huge numbers from Senegal, but Mauritania is probably the number 2 country there when it comes to African countries that are coming across in Lukeville. So you're having hundreds come across every single day. So you're talking, yes, thousands, tens of thousands per month, that just from Mauritania itself. And then, as you mentioned, it's an interesting point you brought up there, Michael, is that, a lot of these people fled from these countries to escape the despots and the dictators or their captors in those countries. A lot of people don't realize there's many Muslim countries in Africa that still practice slavery. While we still, while we have people marching in the streets here from slavery from 200 years ago, slavery still exists in many parts of the Muslim world. But the point is that they're leaving those places, they're escaping those places, presumably, to come here. But now you have the very people they were escaping from following right behind them. And the same is true in Venezuela, and the same is true in Cuba and Colombia. The same is true in China. You've got Chinese escaping the CCP, but then you have the CCP sending their foreign assets as well. So it's the same story. And all of these countries realize, well, we can just blend in with the good guys. They don't know who the good guys or the bad guys are. We don't even share information with most of these countries. So it's very easy for the countries and the people that want to do America harm simply to blend in and come walking on in. And that's what's happening now.
Yeah. What I think's happening too is that, to your point, Ben, there's special forces from our enemy countries here, right? They're putting these
question.
They're populating, they're buried in with these people.
No question.
They're going to organize them in the future and maybe the near future to be disruptive to America. And I believe there's also people, younger people, the military age ones that we're worried about. There's some that are coming over here on purpose to create harm, but there's ones that are coming here with good faith to try to better themselves. But if they get stuck, right, or they can't take care of themselves, they're going to be forced into doing something illegal that they, so they're going to have such a fresh farm of recruiting people.
Yep.
That are desperate.
Huge. That's a great point. Yeah. In fact, a perfect example. That's what I saw in Minneapolis. We were up there covering Super Tuesday.
We may have temporarily lost Ben, but don't worry, he'll pop back in if he can. I know he's on limited time tonight, but yeah, he's right. It's I want to kind of underscore something that he said, that, there's people here that fled something, that have made a life for themselves, that were refugees, asylees, that came here, went through the legal process best they could, or even people like, good friend of the show, Inaz, Annie Cyrus. That's what she did. Over 20 years ago, she came to the U.S. after escaping Iran and having to sit in a UN refugee camp in Turkey until she could get through the process and come to America. But I know some of these guys that are in Cincinnati from Mauritania. I think I've told this story on this podcast before, but I have a friend, an associate, somebody I know down there that was part of the royal family in Mauritania, that he grew up with a couple guys that were slaves his family owned in their family. When he got into his 20s, he had an opportunity to help them escape, so he did. They were near the border. He arranged everything ahead of time to get them to safety somewhere where all of them could then eventually, I think they went through the UK, then Canada, and then eventually were granted whatever immigration status. I'm not sure if it was an asylum visa or what it was to come here to the U.S. And now they all of them together own and run a small taxi service out of Cincinnati. But they had to escape slavery. They all have prices on their heads. He's been completely cut off from the royal family of Mauritania for obvious reasons. But they made huge sacrifices to get here, and they got here for the opportunity, for the freedom, and to be Americans. And we have these just massive numbers of people, endless numbers of people pouring over the border right now. Unfortunately, you do have a lot of people there that are not here for good reasons. Terry, I want to really go back to something you said, like how many of them are here with ill intentions. A while back when we had Anthony Rubin on, I mentioned something to him that he wasn't familiar with. But in the late 60s, there was a program that actually might have been late 60s or early 70s. So Cuba was sending people over in boats, and obviously that's when we had the wet foot, dry foot policy. But some of the people were coming over were being sent by Castro. They were military trained people, special equivalent of like special forces. But what their job was, hey, you're back. I got a good story for you, real quick.
Epic rant, and then I realized I was talking to myself.
Yeah,
so.
I thought I saw a couple of Venezuelans behind you. I got all nervous.
Yes, it's
You dropped off the camera.
It's very possible. But I don't know where I cut off, but to your point, yes, the cartel controls it all. I was in Minneapolis. You've got hundreds of people out, every major city across America. They're begging for work. They come over. They don't have court dates for 2 to 3 to 5 years in the future, so they can't work. So what are they going to do? They're going to work under the table. Every major city in America has cartel influence in it. They work from the Canadian border, they work from our southern border, and they work everywhere in between in the United States. And they are profiting off this. But so are the NGOs, so is the United Nations, so is the UNHCR, all of these organizations, and many people in our own government who are aiding and abetting these policies are profiting off this as well. So really, it's the people, like the Chinese family I met in the Darien Gap 2 weeks ago that are escaping the CCP, that are Christians, that are trying to come here, that want to do it the right way. They're the ones that get stuck in the middle of all of this. And then the people, as you mentioned, coming from a slave country, you come into America just to find out you're going to be a slave again. I mean, it's the height of tragedy. And at the same time, we're destroying our welfare system. I mean, the list of impacts that this has, you could go for an entire hour show and not get the end of it.
Ben,
absolutely.
I'm learning from watching you, right, at the border and stuff. So I sent both you and Mike, and you guys probably, you're so busy you haven't seen it, but I have a video at the Inn of Chicago with all these Venezuelan guys, and then my friend translated for me. And I asked him, did Catholic Charities help you here in Chicago? Yes. Did Catholic Charities help you at the border? Yes. Did you have to go through the cartel at the border? Yes. So it's like, especially Chicago, they're going to be connecting with these people here.
No question about it.
And they're going to have to pay back their debts one way or the other. Families are not. And people don't realize that's going to build up each as time goes on when they fall behind.
So they have networks all throughout. It's not just Mexico, not just Central America, not just South America. It's all throughout the world. And as you mentioned, most of these people can't afford to pay these debts. They're not coming over. Most of the people don't have the $10,000 or $30,000 if you're coming from China it costs to get here. So what are you going to do? You're gonna sell yourself, and you basically say, help me get in. And then once the cartel says, sure, we'll do that. We'll get you across. And then once you get to that city, here's the contact. Here's the person you're going to call. And by the way, if you don't do that, we have your entire family back in your home country or back in your little village that we're going to rape and kill until you pay us back. And then that's where this slavery process that we have in America. We have more slaves in America today than ever before, even though we've outlawed slavery 250 years ago. Now we have more slaves than ever before. So this is what we're up against.
Ben, we're going to talk about this when you're not on the show. Because Mike's edited together about, we've got all these clips of the people from Venezuela and stuff flashing gang signs, but we got my grandparents that came from Italy around 1910, and it's similar, right? I mean, it's, like the Venezuelans and all the things they talked about, the Italians. My grandfather opened a bakery, and the Sicilian, they forced him to pay street tax, and he finally refused, right? They're doing the same thing that's going to happen, except it's Italian, now it's Hispanics. And he refused. What they do, they blew up my grandfather's bakery. He ended up working for Toronto Bakery. Yeah. I mean, so the same stuff is it's going to be replicated, but I think on a bigger scale now.
Yeah, no, you're right. This is, we basically created that whole underworld climate. It's it was the mafia back in the day. And I said 250, that's actually the age of our country. But since the Civil War, we outlawed slavery here, supposedly, but we have more slaves today than ever before. And you're right, we are giving more control, more power. The cartels who used to make $500 million a year on trafficking are now making over $13 billion a year. It's probably closer to 15 to 16 billion. And by the time Joe Biden is done with his first term, it's probably going to be closer to 20 billion of money that they're making. And you think about what you can do with $15 billion as a criminal network.
Yeah.
We're absolutely creating that. And it's not staying in Mexico. It's not staying in Central America. It's coming up here. You're taking that third world mentality. You're bringing it into the inner city, and you're in places like New York and Chicago and Cincinnati, where you've already got problems with crime. You've already got problems with poverty, and you're dumping that fuel onto the fire. It's going to get a hell of a lot worse.
It's going to be just like, revert back to what I'm used to. Sorry, Mike, with the Italians, right? What do they do with that money when they started making money? And Capone, those guys in Chicago, they paid off the politicians. They paid off the police
Exactly.
officers.
Oh yeah, exactly, and that's what's that's what'll continue to happen. As $20 billion is a lot of money. You can grease a lot of palms. That's a lot of politicians. It's a lot of corrupt law enforcement. That's a lot of business people and everything else. Because $20 billion buys you access. People will want that. It also will help them. The more money they have, the easier it is to launder it into other legitimate operations and then seize control of those as well. And again, it's the drugs and everything else that's pouring over the border. I know you've got to run there, Ben. I want to thank you for joining us. I got one other piece of information for you real quick you might find interesting. You may already know this. A while back, we had Anthony Rubin on, and he hadn't heard this story before, but in the late 60s and early 70s, Castro was taking advantage of our wet foot, dry foot policy. He started sending over people that were military trained, equivalent of special forces. Well, their job was, once they got here to the U.S., was to go get jobs as janitors at radio stations, power plants, things like that, so that when a signal was given, you could take down our infrastructure. You could take down the TV, electricity, radio, knock out our communications, knock out power, and make a ground invasion that much easier. And again, that's what we're seeing now. A lot of these people at the border, we're only seeing a fraction of them. There's a lot of people sneaking over too. We know we've had over 160 people on the terror watch list picked up, and those are only the ones we know about. The ones that we don't know about are probably the ones that are more dangerous.
They'll tell you we've caught 8 million, and they say there's 2 million gotaways. The truth is they have no clue. My guess is it's probably closer to 20 million total that they've had since Joe Biden's taken office, at least 15. And the reason I can say that is you go out to these areas, in particular, like Lukeville I was talking about, you go from Lukeville all the way to Yuma, Arizona. That used to be heavily populated by Border Patrol. They have completely shut down operations out there. They've shut down the camps out there. They're not even tracking the numbers. Last time I drove there, or I was down there, I drove the entire route along the border and didn't see a single Border Patrol agent. And so that's what we've done. We've basically ceded that ground, and that's where the cartel exploits it. And even if it's 2 million more than they say it is, how many of those are terrorists? How many of those are cartel members? How many of those are drug smugglers? How many of those are rapists? How many of those are people that have bad intentions for America? There's no question about it. We're basically creating sleeper cells in our country to do America, to undermine this country from within, from a government whose sole purpose is to destroy this country from within. Open communists in our government that want to remake this country in the communist utopian vision, or you have people like Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib that want to make it in the Sharia law utopia that they've always dreamed of. And you've got mainstream media that's not only asleep, but they're complicit in it. Sadly, outside of a few media outlets like our own, but the American people are starting to see it, and it's really up to the American people. 2024 to me is the make or break it year in this country. We either save this country or we lose this country. And yes. I'm going to fight to save it. So it's an honor to be with you guys.
Yeah, you're doing, all you guys, everything we're doing. Not just I'm patting myself, all of us. We got to get more people to do this. They got to wake up. We're in a war. We're losing the war. People don't even know we're in a war. They got to wake up and follow and get involved and help save our kids' futures.
That's it.
Yeah,
I agree.
Well, Ben, I want to thank you for all the work you're doing and everything you've done to highlight this, because I think the work that you guys are doing on the border is the job the mainstream dinosaur media should be doing. This had to get to a fever pitch crisis before they'd even report on it. They ignored it. And if it weren't for people like you, people still wouldn't know. So I know you got to run, so I don't want to take up any more of your time, but we'll get you back on in the future.
If I can just say one thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. And if I could just say one thing, a plug for ours. Our next episode of Law and Border is tomorrow. It airs at 8 p.m. Eastern on Real America's Voice News, americasvoice.news. I would absolutely invite you to watch it. It's our Chicago special.
Hey.
Oh, nice. Oh, no, did he
Oh,
freeze
And
right
it's our
there?
Chicago special. So stay tuned. Watch. Yeah. Yeah. So stay tuned. Watch it tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern.
Great. Hey, Ben,
Perfect.
And
where
I'll see you at the Trump rally.
Ben,
For
you know
everyone
where
who's
I'm
going.
at you know where I'm at right now? I'm in Darien right now. I'm in Darien, Illinois. Hey, I'm serious. That's where I live, Darien. I shouldn't
Well-
say that. Oh, no.
Huh. Well, Ben, I'll make
All
sure we
right,
get that
guys.
shared out and added to
Appreciate
the
you.
description. Thanks again for joining us tonight.
Thanks, buddy. Careful.
Hey, thank you, guys. I appreciate you.
You too. We'll see you soon. Yeah, Terry, I want to get to some of these stories too that you've been sending over. And again, thanks to Ben Bergquam for getting out there and doing the work. Sorry, guys, we had those connection problems, and I'll get his camera fixed off the screen here real quick. But one of the things that you mentioned recently, Terry, to me was it a National Guard depot that you went to that was getting converted over? Was that somebody else?
Yeah, and actually, I'm seeing some of the preview clips that Ben has this, because he was in Chicago. He met with a number of my friends and contacts on one of the segments. He give myself a little plug. I'm in there.
Yeah.
But he was actually at that base. Ben was.
Well, yeah.
So you got to watch the show. So hopefully we could put it out there later. But yeah, he was there.
Yeah.
He was there. They wouldn't let him in. The city of Chicago. So I learned this today watching his preview clips he sent me. And so it was a big with Marines, I think. What did I say? Marine base, whatever. And it was lots of acres, north side of Chicago. And the city of Chicago bought it for like $1.2 million. This is all from Ben's show. I just learned this. Doesn't make sense. They're colluding together, right?
Oh,
and,
no. Well,
and they're housing them.
Well, yeah, and we all know that anyway. This has been collusion all the way for months and months and months. So this was not an active military base; it was an old one, or was this one that people were still stationed on until they moved the invaders onto it?
Yeah, I think it might have been this all just happened the last day or so, right, Mike? When I found out about it, I saw it, then I saw his clip, like, oh wow, So I think it was closed, right? So my father joined the Navy, and he got stuck in Glenview, which is close to where that you get the Navy and the Marines, right? And it was close to that location there, and they closed that down. It was a big area just north of Chicago. It was Glenview Naval Base, where my dad went to boot camp, and he served 4.5 years there. Poor guy, he got stuck. He joined the Navy to see the world. He got stuck in North Chicago, and the Marine base is right there. So I'm assuming because they did close that down and turned it into a big shopping mall and stuff. But that was a while ago. I didn't even know there was a Marine. Well, I sent that to you.
Yeah. Well, I guess when I saw this to begin with, my question is, again, why are we using a facility like this to house illegal aliens? And like a lot of what you've illustrated there in Chicago, they're moving, Americans, homeless people out of shelters and instead moving illegal aliens in. It's America last. It's what we see over and over from this administration. But it is waking people up in Chicago. You're getting more and more people, especially on the South Side, involved and angry, upset with the Biden regime and everyone else because it's destroying their community. I mean, this is a huge influx of invaders that's coming in, and they're taking up all the resources and social services everywhere else. I just saw an article earlier today that the state of Illinois now is going to cut medical benefits for illegal aliens, but also legal resident aliens and a number of other people that were receiving help with the state Medicaid program, because they're already at we're in March and they're at I want to say it was like $2.1 billion spent. Like they've almost spent their yearly budget in 3 months, which again is nuts. But that's what happens when you import a gazillion people, 15 million extra people to a country. It costs money, and it's got to come from somewhere.
Yeah, I think I sent to you. I'm not sure. I know I sent to Ben. So BJ Pritzker, my mayor, our governor, BJ Pritzker. You got to say his name right, BJ Pritzker. Him and Johnson, they spent $1 billion, and then a new investment, $50 million in Bono beef. So for those of you who might be more familiar with Portillo's, and then Bono's like the next one, and Bono beef. I mean, give me a break, $50 million to those people. So above and beyond, here's some of the hidden costs. And again, I think I sent this to you, maybe not. the Chicago Police Department ran way over on their overtime budget. Did I send that to you or no?
I don't know if I saw that one or not, but I've gotten so many in the last few days, I might have missed it.
Yeah, you've been working your ass off. So
Yeah.
they went over like 290 million of their budget in overtime. So when I go to some of these different invader stations where they're housing them, some might have one squad with 2 officers in it. The intake center had 3 squads, right? So they're coming from somewhere, right? They're adding to the overtime. So there's 28 centers in Chicago. I don't know how many have law enforcement there, and then they also like that one where I sent you the I don't need no stinking badges thing.
Yeah. We'll run that video here in a little bit.
They had 5 security guards at one time, Mike. So we're paying, regardless if it's a cop or not, we're paying for those security guards, right?
Well, the other big thing that I know you've been reporting on, because the cost and the overruns with police and everything else, and this is at a time where Baltimore now is going to have no police service from 3 to 7 a.m. because they don't have the officers for it. You're going to get an answering machine. There's like 22 or 24 officers for the entire city of Baltimore now patrolling because they can't afford more than that. But they're only 8% of the crime or 8% of the calls to police occur between 3 and 7 a.m. So if you're in Baltimore, if you can, go buy a gun because you're going to need it. Here's another hidden cost too, is that, so we had the police. I just found this out in the last 2 days when they're talking about, they write it in the local press, but no one ever mentioned about what's causing that overtime, right? Then that's something that just happens, right? So they have to go approval. It just happens. And so another one is the CTA, Chicago Transit Authority. And I think you saw some of the interviews I did with the homeless folks, right? And then one guy talking about in the winter when we had that deep freeze in January, they had 10 CTA buses on every bus, 24/7. Guess who sits in there? CTA bus driver, union bus driver. And they run them 24/7. And they're running overtime for those 10. This is just one location, right? One location. And they're sitting there. So they're talking, I don't know, I can't remember how much the CTA ran over their budget, but they're not taught that. So that's not included in the $1 billion. Right? Oh, yeah. Well, and it's all the other costs that you guys haven't even seen yet. Like you were telling me, I've read the articles now. You guys have a huge outbreak of, what is it, measles down there? Drugs that most of this. These are diseases that only pop up in third world countries at this point. The United States defeated measles decades ago, but it isn't just that. I know there, was it in Texas or Arizona? There's a bunch of people in quarantine right now that have tuberculosis. And again, these are wildly contagious diseases that we haven't seen in years. I'm not going to be at all surprised if we literally have an outbreak of the plague here at some point. I mean, I know the U.S. gets a few cases every year anyway, and it can be, beat with this normal antibiotics, but we're going to start seeing, you import the third world, expect third world results.
Yeah. So Mike, because I share everything, me and Mike are buddies. Last Saturday I went to the Halstead location, right? There was, at that time, there was one outbreak of measles. I don't know if you remember, I sent it to you.
Yep.
And then on Wednesday, there was 5. Today, right before your show, I sent you, I don't know if you saw it, there's 12. Yep. CDC's coming in. Of those 12, there's a handful of kids that are in the Chicago schools. I told you, I knew that was going to happen. So now what's going on? And then Pritzker was he was on the news saying, well, we're not sure, because, some of these asylum seekers don't want the vaccines. Well, they were punishing us in Illinois. Pritzker was punishing us and the mayor that we couldn't even go into the city of Chicago without a vax card. But they're letting these illegal criminals come in, and then they force us to take them, to pay for them, to house them, to feed them, and then they pump it into our schools, and then they don't give them vaccines because they don't want them. I mean, you saw that. I mean, Pritzker said some of them didn't want the vaccines. So
we don't want to force these new Americans to take a medical treatment that they don't agree to and don't want. And guys, if you're watching out there on Rumble and everywhere else, I'm sorry I don't have the chat up. Normally Derek handles that, and I don't have a good way to pull it up on this laptop while we're talking. But the measles, the fact that these guys, so some of these people were in the regular schools with the general population. So I wonder by Monday how many American citizens, kids, are going to be sick with the measles. And again, I know like people are supposed to get the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine when they're like 2 years old, but there's a lot of people that don't get vaccines for their kids, or a lot of people that maybe it doesn't work anymore. Maybe it's worn off. We don't know. So if you guys have a large outbreak of measles, even if there's no fatalities or anything else, I wonder if anybody in our media will talk about it when all of a sudden 1,000 kids are sick with the measles, again, a disease that's basically been wiped out in the U.S. for decades.
Yeah, I read, because of what happened this week in Chicago, that it could float in the vicinity for 2 hours.
Yes.
90% transmit. I was like, so I'm walking, I'm like, okay, I got a measles shot, but that was in the last century. Hopefully I'm still good.
Yeah, good point. But it's scary. And the measles is just one thing that we know that they've had. The tuberculosis is another, and who knows what we haven't heard about either, because we do know other people get pulled from the border to quarantine. They do check some people, but a lot of people are just released into America to go wander the streets, or I guess to get flown around by essentially our Uber service now, Uber for illegals. So what else is going to pop up? Or are we going to end up with a cluster of hundreds of thousands of Americans sick with some disease that we don't see here anymore? And will we even have antibiotics to treat it now? There are still medicine shortages because a lot of our medication is made in China. What if they want to cut us off from our supply when all of a sudden we need penicillin to treat whatever, or some other drug? Will we even be able to get it if there is a widespread outbreak? These again are huge problems and huge concerns.
Yeah, think about, kind of reflect back on what's going through our country right now, right? These illegal criminals, right? So yes, some of them are asylum seekers, right? Some of them are coming. So I don't want to take away from that. Most of them are not, right? And most of them are being coached by the NGOs. They're being coached,
Yes.
right? And a lot of them want to come and have a better life, but that's not our criteria. Everybody from the world wants to have a better life, and I don't blame anyone to want to have a better life for their family, but that doesn't mean we're going to let everybody come from anywhere in the world and collapse the United States of America, right? So they're coming into our country. They're going through the airports. They don't have to go through TSA security, right? They don't have to go through the same security process as us. Now we're finding out that if they don't want to get a vaccine, Pritzker's saying they're not getting a vaccine. So it's like, why do we have to adhere to laws of our own country as citizens of the United States when these people who legally snuck into our country could break our own laws and supported and endorsed by the Democratic Party? They want, like to Ben's point, they want to destroy America. I don't know if they want to destroy it, but they want to risk the destruction of America to maintain their power, right? I think that's more fair to say. So, if they destroy America, they're going to lose their own power. So they want to maintain their power, roll the dice, flood it with these illegals. Hopefully, if they could vote illegal, that's fine. But they don't even have to vote illegally. All they have to do in the census, Illinois, California, and New York, is going to have so many extra representatives, right? Because of these illegals. They're not even have to vote. And we'll never win Congress again.
Well, exactly, and I do think that's part of the game. Is they don't care. They don't care whether there's a path to citizenship, who's here for what, or how much damage it does. To them, it's about maintaining political power. Because now that you do have this big block of, say, 500,000 illegal aliens in Chicago, all of a sudden you pick up a few extra seats. The people elected to represent those seats in Congress will not be loyal to Americans. They're going to be loyal to their constituency, which is going to be primarily illegal aliens for those newly formed districts. So it takes the vote and takes the power away from where it belongs, from states that people fled. New York, they fled California, they fled Chicago, they fled a lot of these blue cities and blue states during the pandemic, and they went to Texas, they went to Florida, they went to other red states for the freedom. And this is a way to reverse all that. This is a way to steal their vote, steal their political power, and keep it in a blue state rather than where where they went to escape the tyranny there. It also, again, it creates a tax base. It creates an excuse for more government programs. It's going to grease a lot of palms having all these people here, but those in office don't care. They don't left to live out here with all of us serfs. You know, they're going to have their private security. They're going to be protected. They're not going to have to deal with food shortages, medicine shortages, problems with hospitals and medical facilities, and everything else that will happen as a result of importing 15 plus million people. I mean, it could realistically be 20 million additional illegal immigrants in the United States by the end of this year. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree everything you just said. Also, keep in account in the city of Chicago, it's just under $35,000 a student. Think about it. My kids could go to college for that, right?
Yeah.
And the education system sucks. It's awful. It's horrendous, right? They're doing an awful job. Forget about the indoctrination and stuff when they can. It's a horrendous job. So now we have, so the last number was 6,000 students, 6,000 illegals that are coming in, pumping in. So think about that with the $35,000. You know, I'm a dumb South Side. I can't do the math in my head. That's a lot of money, right?
Yeah. Let me grab a
yeah,
calculator.
Yeah, I would assume it's going to be more. It's going to cost more than the average $35,000 per student, because they have to have bilingual and extra things that to account for these people, these children that don't speak English, and then have to deal with their families, right? And communicate with them. Then I read another story. So I think like one of the locations, I'm just using this as an example, Gage Park in the South Side on Western, and they're housing a bunch of illegals there, right? So you come in during the school year, your kids go to a school close to Gage Park, but that's a temporary housing. It's not supposed to be more than 2 months, right? But I don't know how they're going to do that, because they're not even getting work permits within the 2 to 3 weeks, we were told. So you get moved out of Gage Park into housing through Catholic Charities to somebody further north than there, that's outside of the district. It's written in law that you have to transport that student to the school they were in. It's like I read in the store. I'm like, oh my God! So we got to pay for that. What is that? An Uber? I mean, I'm exaggerating, but they're responsible to making sure during the school year that the child can get to that school.
Well, to answer your earlier question with what it was going to cost, so even if we assume that there's no additional cost, which we all know there will be, since a lot of these kids don't speak English, don't know the area, a lot of them are going to need help with food, meals, and everything else here in the schools. Just with those 6,000 students that they've already got, $210 million. That's the cost so far. And again, that's just what we know on the surface. So
right, when they say 6,000, it's probably 10. You know what I mean, right? I mean, they lie about everything.
Well, yeah. Again, like the 85,000 missing children we always hear about from the border. People forget that number is like 8 or 9 months old now, and they just won't update it because they don't want us to know what the real total is of missing kids from the border. So that 6,000 figure, I'm sure that's months old. It's probably 60,000 by now. And if it's 60,000 by now, I mean, you can do the math, then we're into the billions. But it's going to be the same all over the country. And when you talk about like smaller towns, rural areas, and other places where, again, I know it is primarily cities that they're busing and flying people to, but it is some small towns and other areas too. They may not have the resources, period, to deal with this influx of people. We've already seen, like in Texas, several towns that were overrun. Oh, I can't think of the name of the one. There was one. It was a smaller town somewhere near the border. Initially, they had a population of under 5,000. They have over 50,000 people staying in there now. They've had to put in new sewers, new water lines, new infrastructure. The local areas do not have the resources needed to deal with this kind of influx. And it is probably going to get worse before it gets better because the Biden regime does not want to stem this tide. They're kind of getting to the point now where they're forced to make some, pretend actions to do something about it and give some fiery speeches. But I don't see them making a real effort to stop any of this before the election. Do you, Terry?
No. I got a question for you, Mike.
Sure.
What does Biden have, like 32% approval rating or something like that, which they're saying is low? So can you help me, kind of dumb Southsider, who are those 32% that think he's doing a good job? Can you tell me who they are?
I honestly, I really don't know at this point. Like, I know there's some like never Trump derangement syndrome wackos that will support Biden or whoever else. They don't care. They would literally vote for Satan himself over Donald Trump because they think it would be the lesser of two evils. So there's some blue-haired moonbats out there, same thing, that do want this kind of policy, that they do want to see the United States and the West destroyed. So we'll say maybe that accounts for 20%. We'll be generous. It's probably, more like 5 to 10%. But I have no idea. Because we've talked about it on here, and I'm sure. Well, again, like your event that you helped Mike Lindell put on in Chicago, it was around 400 people that attended. Almost 200 of them had been registered Democrats prior to that flipped over just in the last couple of years.
Yeah. So here's what I think. I was talking with one of my buddies about that, kind of baffled. Like, they're talking about how bad his approval rating. It's only 32. It's like, why isn't it not like 2%?
Yeah,
like 48% of the American population does not pay federal income tax, right? I think that's about close, right? And so of that 48%, most of them are, or the 32% are probably on so much cheese from the American government that it's got to be those people, right? I mean,
I think I got it. I think they're pulling illegal aliens along with the voters because, of course, they would support Biden. Okay. He's the one that brought down the wall and opened the gate for him. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, because I was telling my kids, my kids are juniors in high school. My son, actually, he's more involved, or at least he cares to listen. My daughter's indifferent, but I try to explain to them. It's like with the Republicans and we got the Democrats, right? The Democrats, their figurehead is Santa Claus, right? We're the serious father, right? And we're having a hard time with money, and we have to, Christmas is coming up. We gotta buy Christmas presents on the credit card. So Dad says, we gotta kind of cut back. But you got Santa Claus over here. Hey, let's give you whatever you want. Who cares if we could afford it? That's what we're competing against, right?
Yeah.
The Democrats are like Santa Claus. We're competing against Santa Claus. And how do you go to your children, the uninformed Democrats that are getting handouts, right? How do you go to them and say, hey, we can't afford this. We really can't. I know you're not paying for it. I know you want it, but we're borrowing money from China. We can't afford it. Well, I don't care. I want Joe Biden.
Well, yeah, and you're right. That is part of the problem because it's hard to compete against Santa Claus. It's hard to compete against someone that just will write a check, write up more debt, enslave your children, your grandchildren, your grandchildren's children, and all future generations to the Chinese and to whoever else is buying our debt. And that we are already all serfs. It's only going to get worse with all the money that we're spending. We're already past the point where we can't even pay our debt. If our interest rate goes up from where it's at now to like a historic average at 4%, there's no money left. And it's very realistic that could happen at any time. But further to your point, we are competing against people that are low information voters, as Rush Limbaugh used to call them. Like, they don't understand what's really going on, especially people that already are living on the government dole, the 48 to 49% of the U.S. population that doesn't pay taxes and doesn't care, the percentage that qualify for earned income opportunity tax credits and everything else, where they're not paying into the system, but they're getting huge checks back every year when they file their taxes. The people that dip out and disappear around every end of January, mid-February, they go on vacation for a few months because they just got their giant tax return for all their kids and everything else and all the write-offs for the money they didn't earn the previous year. So that's what we're dealing with. It is people like that don't care and don't understand their actions are destroying the country. And that's why our education system is the way it is. That's why we keep churning out stupider and stupider kids, because they don't want they don't want the population to understand what's going on, be smart enough to do something to fix it. They want to maintain power at the cost of our nation and our future.
Yeah, they're trying to set, we hear this over and over. It's not a surprise to you. They're trying to separate the children from the parents, from the family, right?
Yes.
They don't want our children, young men, to grow up to be like us. They don't want a podcast. They don't want Ben going to the border. They don't want me confronting them at school boards. They don't want that. They want these kids to be weak, right? They want them to be lemmings and follow them. And they're so far, unfortunately, they're being successful, right? They're pummeling all of us. Like Derek, I'm proud to be your stand-in. You got a fellow insurrectionist here.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't go in. I did not go in.
Yeah, it's a quick disclaimer. But yeah, you're right. And then the people that do stand up and do something right now, our government is more concerned with harassing somebody like you or me or Derek or any of the J6 defendants, somebody that goes to a protest at an abortion clinic, than they are actually capturing real criminals. We see how it happened in New York with these guys from, was it Venezuela, that attacked the police. They're out on bail within a few hours. They don't care. In the major cities, they're doing this no bail policy. They're releasing the dangerous, including violent offenders, back to the streets. And if you go protest at a Biden rally, or you protest in front of an abortion clinic, or you're talking online saying you don't like the government, or you're doing, even buying Bibles, ammunition, guns, or tracking credit card purchases. If you're on the right side of the political aisle, they treat you like your public enemy number one. They will go above and beyond sentencing guidelines, make sure they lock you up, throw away the key. But if you're on the left, you can burn down a city. There shouldn't be any consequences there.
Yeah. It's the bias and the control and what they've done to our judicial system is crazy. I mean, it's scary. It's like the stuff with the J6 or Derek, and
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't hurt anybody. He didn't break anything. He trespassed. It should have been at the worst, if not dropped, a slap on the wrist, right? But
Yeah.
then we got domestic. We have, and I don't know if that was you or Ben that said how many terrorists came through the border. Was it you or Ben that said that?
That was me, and my number is probably low because 160 was months ago.
It's bullshit too, right? I'm not you bullshit. It's bullshit because the ones that we know, that we tracked, the domestic terrorists, they're the dumb ones, right? They're the smart ones. The really dangerous ones are not getting caught, right? We have no clue of those. And then we're just talking about the southern border. It has nothing to do with Canada. All the smart strategic ones are coming through Canada, right? Because I know they're sending some of the Homeland Security guys down south from Canada. That's wide open. We have no clue. And then think about it, or some of your guests, and I was on the domestic terrorist watch list, right? My family was PSA. I mean, we've got all these people coming in that are real terrorists, and they're spending time, money, effort, resources tracking me or my family, harassing me, sending 5 TSA agents and undercover air marshal. I mean, it's ridiculous, right? It's absurd.
Well, yeah.
How much time, money, and effort and treasure, whatever you want to call it, that they're taking away from investigating the terrorists that are flooding our borders. They shouldn't have wasted a second on anyone like myself or any other people that the left deemed as a domestic terrorist. And I'd like to know who had the authority to put me on a domestic terrorist watch list. And then after Matt Gaetz and Congressman Troy Niels sent those letters, all of a sudden, poof, I'm off. So who had the authority to take me off? It shouldn't be that easy to put me on, nor should it be that easy to take me off from a letter, right?
Yeah. Well, exactly. Yeah. And again, there should be some repercussions for whoever put you on illegitimately. But I mean, this is the other big thing, that once Trump does win in 2024, as long as we have an election, that's the other thing that we really need to clamp down on at the federal level. This power needs to be stripped away. These government agents and agencies should not have the power or the ability to harass people for political reasons that they don't like, that are on the other side of the aisle. And that is a lot of what we're seeing. Like, I was just having a conversation with one of my friends yesterday, and she mentioned flying to another city. I told her I don't fly anymore. I'm good not getting a prostate exam every time I go to the airport. I'd rather drive. Not to mention, with the way state of things are now, like, there's certain places I don't want to go.
I don't have a prostate anymore, so I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, well, either way, I don't want to get the 5-finger treatment from every TSA operator at the screening station, or even worse, be like Derek, get put on the Quad S list, where they send people. They don't just harass you when you're checking in at the airport. With Derek, with Derek, they were sending people for his layovers and molesting him there again.
My family, my twins were on that because of me when they flew with me.
You gotta be kidding me.
They're giving me the exam and stuff. I'm like, I go, you like that shit, don't you, when you're doing the prostate exam? I didn't say that. I'm sorry. Joking.
Yeah,
sorry.
you should have. Well, yeah, but again, the fact that they would put your kids on the same list, make sure they get the same treatment, and it's to send a message to you. At the end of the day, it isn't for a legitimate reason. It's to harass you and to scare you into silence. It's the same thing they're doing with most of this. Okay, well, they want to say maybe one or two of these J6 offenders that did break some windows or whatever deserve to be on the Quad S list, where they can get the premium pat down every time they go to the airport. Okay, fine. I don't think that's the case, but at least they would have a reason for it.
Yeah.
The rest of this is just pure harassment.
None of those people deserve the Quad S list. Now, so I was down there with the police officer, right? So some of those people that fought and pummeled with the police, they deserve, but my friends, like the guys you saw on the South Side, right? The couple agents and stuff, they said, if they got beat up here in Chicago like that, they're lucky if the guy gets arrested, let alone a few weekends in jail, let alone what they're doing to these people, right? So because of what we're saying here, that we're not saying, hey, oh, you should just forget about it. No, but these guys don't deserve 2, 3, 5, 10, 20 years in jail. Give me a break.
Oh, exactly. Well, yeah, what we see right now is an inversion of justice that, our courts in certain areas are completely captured ideologically. It isn't about justice. It isn't about truth. And it's not about punishing people who are breaking the law and harming others. It's about punishing your political opponents. They're letting ruthless criminals, especially in Chicago, out on the streets days after, dropping charges, not prosecuting, whatever. People that are, responsible for the deaths and, that are destroying the neighborhoods up there, but they're back out in the streets. But somebody like you or I does something wrong, we stand in the doorway at an abortion clinic, we hold up the wrong sign at a protest, we're going to be doing 20 years. Whereas some wannabe gangbanger out in Chicago shoots up 5 houses on the South Side, they'll drop half the charges, give him 6 months probation, and then he'll be back out next day doing the same thing.
Mike, after remember Garland wrote that letter about school board parents back, and it was in August that came out.
Yep.
Way before I met you, over 2.5 years ago, I think. Holy cow! Wow, time's flying. So
I know.
USA wrote a story on it, and these scumbags had 2 law enforcement agencies, riot gear, and after the story came out from TPUSA, and they had the pictures of the riot gear, and then 2 FBI agents were there 2.5 years ago. Because I'm speaking out against oral. I have nothing against gay kids. Absolutely nothing. I don't care what you do, but I'm against the oral sex BJ books they're putting in our kids' schools. Not the children, the adults, not LGBT gay teachers, straight liberals are putting it in there on purpose to divide and fight, make us fight amongst ourselves. Because a gay child, you can't tell me a gay child has to see a strap-on dildo being sucked by another person, or they won't feel included. They might kill themselves. It's a lie. They're dividing us, and they're trying to demonize us for saying this doesn't belong. That's all. It doesn't belong in our kids' school. It doesn't matter if it's gay or heterosexual. And these scumbags send law enforcement, FBI agents, and riot gear.
Yeah. Well, let me think about it. 20 years ago, some teacher had wanted to bring in their, collection of Playboy and Penthouse magazines and put that in the school library. They would have been run out of town with pitchforks and torches. But now, stuff that's equally as graphic or worse is now getting pushed in front of your kid. Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah, I saw your posters. Far worse. And now that's getting pushed in front of the kids on a daily basis in a lot of these schools. We also know teachers are going behind the parents' backs to indoctrinate their kids and push them further into this. I mean, it really is. It's a cult. It's a psychopathic cult that wants they want control of your kids for life, and this is their en route to get it. They're going to try to separate them. They're going to indoctrinate them, and then they're going to push them off into this. That's why they want the power. That's why they want to be able to do things without notifying the parents. Is they think their kids or your kids, they think your kids are their kids, that you're not qualified, and they should be the ones teaching them their values and what to do going through life. They don't want any conservative, Christian, or traditional values passed on to anyone.
Yeah, if my kids want a baby aspirin or a prescription from the doctor, it's a big deal, right? To go through school, It is. But if my son or daughter, my twins, want to eat, they want to change their sex, they could do that, and they don't have to tell us. But
and then if you misgender one of them, they might drag you in and on charges or take your kids away because you're not celebrating their new gender identity.
Yep. Yeah. Everything's upside down.
Yeah. Well, it's up to us to actually put our boots on the ground. And that's, again, why we need all of you in the audience. We need everybody to take a firmer stand here, to go to your school board meetings, be brave like Terry, go to your city council meetings, speak out if this is happening where you live, lead others. A lot of times it just takes one brave person stepping forward, and all of a sudden you realize you have an army of 100 people behind you that all thought the same thing that you did, that wanted to stop this, but they just didn't quite have the courage to be that first person to come forward and say something. Is that kind of what you saw when this happened too? Once you were brave enough to speak out, did other parents join the fight?
No.
Really?
Just as dumb. I thought I would get like a whole army. And when
Really?
I first came into this and I first met these parents, and the first school board meeting I went to, I got there 30 minutes late. I only spoke to them on the phone. Never been involved in politics. Was a Democrat. Went, I went because of the forced masking 2.5 years ago, and
Yeah.
I found out about the porn. So I get there and they're all in the parking lot. After 30 minutes, I was late. I had a dinner meeting. I'm like, I thought the meeting goes for a while. And they go, well, they kicked us out. I go, why? Well, I went over my 3 minutes. So I didn't know about the time 3 minutes. They have 3 minutes when you're in front of board. And then she said, yeah, so they got mad. It's all liberal, radical, leftists, and Marxists. They shut down the meeting, kicked them out, had a private meeting. And I'm like, that's bullshit. I go, I'm going to teach you guys how to fight like an ex-Democrat, Southside Italian. And sure, here I am. Because of what I did, I would go and I'd call them out, and they couldn't handle it. That's why the police show. They're not used to having people fight back because parents didn't get involved, especially fathers. You did nothing. You let your wives do it. And now they solidified their base within the school boards, right?
Yep.
And we're stuck. And then in Illinois, BJ Pritzker set it up that say if we take over the whole school board. And he's like, wow, that's a BJ picture. There's no reason for that book to be in there. Oh, we could keep these other books. He set it up that Pritzker put a law in place that we cannot get rid of those books. And if we do, he's going to withhold our own tax dollars, our money for our students, for our children, and not give it to our schools. That's ridiculous.
Well, that's nuts. Well, and at least you did have some support there. I'm surprised you weren't able to inspire others right off the bat to get up and do something about it.
I'm trying to go to. You have a Twitter account? See if I could play Derek's role and see if we got questions while you're talking.
Well, yeah. Actually, I got a video I want to play for you here real quick. Okay. I don't know if I told you about this earlier or not, but this is on the streets in New York now. This kind of goes back to our immigration from earlier. Let me run this.
Yo, fam, please don't tell me I think that's what I think that is. My man said, I'm doing something about this rap problem in New York City.
Is that serious?
Yeah, that's real. That's one of the areas in New York. I think it was in the Bronx, where you now have all the illegal aliens that were up in that area, apparently catching rats, roasting them on the street, and serving them up to the public. Coming to Chicago soon, I'm sure. When's rat season up there?
It's got to be illegal. Although licensing, well, I guess it doesn't matter if you're an illegal, right?
Yeah, I was about to say. Yeah, if you're willing to hop over the border and and take everything else, I don't think. I'm pretty sure the fine for roasting a rat and serving it is probably comparable to hopping our border. Maybe not.
I got a prediction. This summer, there's going to be a lot more chicken or cockfighting in New York and Chicago. You want to bet? It's going to be.
Oh yeah, I'm sure there. Yeah. Well, I'm sure it is, because again, like, you import the third world, expect third world behavior, and that's what, again, we're only seeing the surface of it right now. Who knows what else is going on that hasn't been brought to people's attention? And I'm sure we're going to see more of this.
I think I'm going to go to my cousins down in Southern Illinois, buy a couple of roosters, and put them on steroids and make some money this summer.
Yeah. You're gonna get out ahead of the curve. You're gonna show everybody what's up.
Put them on some Diana ball, get them working out, and I'll make some money.
Oh, that's great. But yeah, it's I don't know. I mean, I don't even know what's going to be left of the country by this summer, especially if things continue at the current rate. Like what Ben said earlier, with everybody's coming into like Cincinnati and Chicago. Like, I know there's already 5,000 people from Senegal and Mauritania that have already moved up this way from south of the border that have crossed illegally. What the rumor that's been going around here, and again, I've heard this from multiple people, is they're expecting at least another 5,000 in the area. I know Catholic Social Services and Catholic Charities are facilitating a lot of it, but there's also HIWAS and a lot of other organizations, both here and other places around the country. And we've got to do something to clamp down on this. And we can't back down. We have to do mass deportations when Trump gets in office, or this country will be unrecognizable and falling to pieces within the next 2 years.
I think it's too late, but we got to fight. I mean, and when I say that, I really do. I mean, it's like the damage is here. We got to figure out how to stop the cancer. I guess to lighten things up, I don't know how easy. If you have my no stinking badges video, is that something?
I'm actually I'm having trouble with the player, which is why I didn't run it earlier. Why I only ran the one. So
okay,
yeah,
that's okay. Yeah, that's a funny one.
Let me see if I can get it. Go ahead. I'm going to give it one more try. See if I can get this player to work correctly.
Yeah, the video. So I went into a number of different illegal shelters, right? The Inn of Chicago, which is right off the Magnificent Mile. There's another one that was on South Pulaski, and they have 5 security guards. So I'm half Italian. When I throw my baseball hat on backwards, I put my black leather jacket on, I look Hispanic. And so I was able to get through the security guards, and I went inside the facility. And actually, I got into a couple of different facilities. And I think Mike has some of those clips, but if he could.
I got the badges video to work, so let me run this for you.
Okay, so real quickly, a lot of you are way younger than me, right? There was a movie, black and white movie, before I was born, about a cowboy fighting with these Mexican guys at the border, and he's asking if they got badges. Oh, I don't need no stinking badges. It's fun. It's funny. He played it on the radio all the time when I grew up. So when I go into this shelter, these African-American security guards are like, "You got an ID?" I'm like, "I got a driver's license." I got past them because they thought I was Hispanic. And then they go, "You got a badge?" I'm like, "Badge? You got a badge?" I'm like, "Badge? I don't need no stinking badges." So you got to see the clip. If you don't understand the movie, it's funny as shit. And then they thought I was nuts. So go ahead.
Huh. Well, I want to point out something at the end of this too. So let's go ahead and run it.
What?
You don't have to come in without ID. You can't come in without ID. Get out.
I got my driver's license.
Come on.
Badges? Badges? We don't need no stinking badges.
You need a badge.
Hey, you ever see that? Badges? Who you guys work for?
Can you stop recording?
I sent you
Who
the
do you
wrong
work for?
one.
Go in the chat.
I sent you the wrong one.
Who do you work for?
Oh, sorry.
Come on, man.
Oh, you're fine. Well, what I wanted to point out here is she doesn't want to tell you who they work for, and then she tries to get the other guy to go hide in the shack so you can't ask any more questions. They know they're in the wrong, and that's again why, when it comes down to it, we got to prosecute everybody that facilitated this human trafficking. And I don't care if you worked for an NGO, if you worked for Border Patrol, or whoever else. If you weren't there speaking out and doing something to stop this, blowing the whistle, sorry, you're guilty too.
Yeah, so there's another thing that you point out in there. If you notice, the one guy who was metal detector, right?
Yep.
So these are where they house the poor asylum seekers, the family members, right, that need housing and shelter from us because they're leaving, these dangerous third world countries, right? They're coming here for safety and security.
Yeah.
I saw the metal detector there, right? That one security guard.
Mm-hmm.
So now they have a metal detector. They got a metal at the wand, right? So these poor homeless asylum seekers that need help, safety, security, protection from the bad guys in South America have to be screened for weapons right here in the United States. Where they're coming here and they're obviously getting weapons in, and they got to go through metal before they go to sleep in a place that we're housing and feeding them. So this was at this location. There was another location. So I'm sorry, the clip, I sent the wrong clip. That there's an edited clip, and it's so much more funny with the black and white editing of the Hispanic guy. So it's not as funny without, I sent the wrong one to Mike.
That's okay. We'll grab the right one next time, and it's probably my fault too. I've been going through editing all these videos for the last couple of days. I probably dropped the wrong one in the wrong folder. Terry, what's the best place for our audience to find you?
At Terry Newsome 357 on X. At Terry Newsome, Terry 357. That's on X, and then we got our link tree, and we're on Rumble and YouTube and all that stuff, and we've got all kinds of cool stuff. And Mike's shown some of it. He is nice enough to invite me on in the past, where I'm meeting with. I'm actually confronting some of these people that are
Yep.
coming up on the buses and like security for these guys, right? And ex-military guys. I'm confronting. You saw the gang members, the Trendala Argura. I can't even say it right. I barely
yeah.
speak English. The gang members that are flashing gang signs at me. So it's on our YouTube site or in Twitter, and just go to Linktree and you'll see all those. But I mean, they're flashing the gang signs. The guys that beat up the police officers in New York, they're in Chicago. As soon as they get off the bus from Mexico and they're walking to the train to go into Chicago, they're like this, or they try to intimidate me and follow me when I go and film them at Gage Park, and so the gang members are here, and they're here arrogantly. They're here for trouble.
Yes.
And they're at multiple locations in Chicago.
100%. We had this story too out of Lakeland, Florida, just last week with Sheriff Grady Judd, that giant human trafficking ring. What was it, 160 some odd people caught in Lakeland, and the U.S. federal government's the one that was buying their plane tickets, flying them around the country. They go to city to city with all these poor women they've got entrapped, and set up basically brothels, and then they fly out to their next destination. And our government is facilitating this. It is you and I paying taxes, footing the bill for illegal activity. But if you guys aren't following Terry on Twitter, you need to be. Great videos. He's out there on the ground doing the reporting, bringing these stories that the mainstream media doesn't want you to hear. And again, we got some other things in the works, so you'll be seeing a lot more from Terry Newsome over here. And make sure you watch his podcast, Behind Enemy Lines. What time is it on Thursdays, Terry?
It's on 7:00 Central Standard Time.
7 Central.
Look at Abraham Lincoln.
It's a great picture.
So thank you, Mike. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for joining us here at the Insurrection. To our audience, please like, share, and subscribe. Please help us to grow this podcast so we can bring more people the news the mainstream media doesn't want you to hear. Thank you to Ben Bergquam for joining us tonight. We'll try to get him back here for a longer segment, but it was very generous of him to join us tonight with limited time while he's traveling. And Terry, thank you for being here with us. To our audience, please, again, like, share, and subscribe. And we'll be back next week with any more, as long as we make it through the weekend without the apocalypse. Thanks.